Welcome to Volume 3 of the Commercial Collection. We begin our look at the commercial scene with a visit to Bovington. Bovington Camp, where the home is of the Tank Museum, and of course they have this huge test track alongside where on the open day when the military and ex-military vehicles were down there in September '94, some of the lads volunteered to have a go around this test track to test their skills and their luck and the vehicle's capabilities. That interesting vehicle there, that's a Russian Ural that came all the way from the Gulf. Belongs really, I suppose, to Saddam Hussein, but as yet he hasn't asked for it back. Interesting big vehicle, tough as old boots. And he's pulling backwards here a 6x6 Thames Trader that's owned by Barry Marshalsea of Cork Castle. Barry always enjoys a bit of fun through the mud, and he had that stuck on a couple of occasions, well and truly, with a chassis twisted all shapes. But on this occasion, Barry, you're doing fine. Well done. Back to the old Ural again. These vehicles used as backup vehicles when the challenge was on television of two cars traveling around the world, and so over the Siberian section a couple of these lorries were used, really built for hard going in a tough old country. Now here are the lads with the Scammell Explorers. They always enjoy themselves, purposely getting stuck just to try the other one's skills at pulling or winching to get them out. This dip here, as you can see, is about 3 foot deep. Careful where you put your feet on this job. The Scammell Explorer, a fine vehicle designed about 50 years ago. It followed the famous Scammell Pioneer that was the best tank recovery vehicle of World War II. He's out. There she is again. A lot of these vehicles now are running on diesel, but they were originally designed with a Meadows petrol engine. Not a very economic vehicle to own in preservation. 6-speed gearbox. The Explorer, of course, has front-wheel drive, whereas the Pioneer did not. Here she goes, taking a bath. Very interesting back-wheel arrangement on these old Scammells, as much as you've got one differential that drives the 4 wheels through rocking beams. Bit of wheel spin there, getting nowhere. So it's climb out, whistle up for assistance. Just watch this mud churn up. Isn't that lovely? That reminds me of the bath water after our local football matches many years ago. And out she goes. What do they say about men and their toys? Great fun day down here at Bovington. Another interesting machine here, privately owned, the FB434. It's a Remy fitter's vehicle, as was used by the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. What an enjoyable day this driver had, but I don't know about his pocket money, because these things don't do very many to the gallon when they're negotiating terrain such as this. And there's the FB434, just made that Scammell simply leap out of where it was stuck moments ago. Big Rolls-Royce multi-fuel engine in these vehicles. The running gear in the engine is identical to that of the Abbott self-propelled gun. Some of these are now in private hands. Another rare one, another foreign vehicle. Quite a collection of British and foreign vehicles here. Certainly a great day for the off-road fan. Not a difficult vehicle to drive. You've got your little pre-select gear lever on your left. And you just give it the revs and away it goes and steer with the levers. If you want to stop, you pull both levers back. But where the skill comes in is judging the width and knowing just how to negotiate these horrific dips and humps and water on this test track. Got to go back and have another go at that one. The roar of that diesel engine multi-fuel Rolls-Royce. They are multi-fuel, but invariably they are run on diesel. But they're capable of just a few adjustments, run on anything like petrol, paraffin, depending on the emergencies during action. Oh dear, one old Explorer stuck in there just like a sick animal, isn't it? You can almost hear the cry of anguish. Tries to get out of that trap. No. Very difficult part this was. The problem here is that you've got this vertical wall of clay, and if the vehicle happens to slide, and it invariably did, against that wall of clay, there was nothing could shift you. You were absolutely stuck there. But there's always plenty of help on hand. It's just as much fun pulling them out as it is getting stuck. And here she comes. Tough British machinery. I don't think that vehicle's ever been surpassed at off-roading, not the old Scammell Explorer. Now here's a lad who's been watching points during the day, learning by other people's mistakes. It's a struggle. Give her the gun, and through she comes. There he is. We waited a long time. Full marks to you, son. Full marks. What a day down here at Bovington. These vehicles travel from far and wide. Some come under their own steam, as we call it, and some get carried. But there's no disrespect to those drivers. They come a long way. There's 84 miles to do on the run alone. So it's quite a long day to get your vehicle to Bournemouth and get it to Bath. So these are the chaps who are going to sacrifice their Sunday morning breakfast and sacrifice their cooked lunch and enjoy what I enjoy, and a lot of us, I'm sure, do enjoy, the nostalgia of the good old British commercial vehicle. This run is organised by the HCVS, the Historic Commercial Vehicle Society. The Southern Branch do this one every year, this being the 23rd. And some of these vehicles we should see on this film have been on every one of those runs. That's enthusiasm. Good old British heavies over there, and the buses, of course, getting everything polished up, including the Indian's head up there on the radiator. That shows that that bus is a guy. Feathers in our cap was their motto. And Albion's there, sure as the sunrise. Few last-minute adjustments. Everything's got to be ready, and there's a lot of excitement here, I'm sure. Dave Noel from Bristol with his Thames Trader, he knows it so well, he knows it backwards. The buses, they look nice on these runs. It's hard to realise that these buses are 40 and 50 years old. Such is the condition. The LNER, the London North Eastern Railway, livery on the side of this Austin K model. Yes, there's quite a lineup, over 200 vehicles, with 84 miles slog, over beautiful Dorset, Wiltshire, Avon, countryside. Little J-type Morris van there, that was always a... Oh, we got the police here as well. More about them later. National Fire Service. We had NFS and AFS during the war. You youngsters probably won't know that. And there's no Bono's Morris. That's going back a few years, 1924. It's called the Traveller's Van. Another one coming off its parent truck here. One of our good old British heavies. The thing we were noted for back in the 20s and 30s and the 40s, making good, solid, sound, heavy vehicles. Who makes them now? Certainly not Great Britain. What a shame. But on a day like this, we can go along and we can enjoy. Just look at the front of that phone there. Look at those old buses. We can enjoy what we used to know we were so proud of. British engineering. Big double-decker Bristol there reminds me of when I was a young lad. That's the vehicles we had running through our village.
Going up the hills,
the interviewer down at Bournemouth having a chat here with a fellow with a Model T Ford. It's 1920 Model T. And if I'm right, I believe that's done 22 runs before this run today. 100% performance. Ray Coates of Bronzy.
No recorder. Well, there you are.
Good luck on your run.
Thank you for taking part in the run again.
May you go on and complete many more. There she rolls. The Model T Ford. They built millions. Laurel and Hardy wore out a few of them too, didn't they? Well, I've got with me here the managing director of the present Dennis, John Smith. And how long have you been with the company, John?
Nearly 20 years.
Nearly 20 years. You're getting the hang of things now. Well, perhaps you can tell us, for the benefit of the people who are going to interestingly buy this video, a little of the history of Dennis's.
Well, Dennis's was started in 1895 by two brothers, John Dennis and Raymond Dennis, and they came from Devon, and they set up in the High Street in Guildford, 94 High Street, producing bicycles. And then in 1899 they started to produce cars. It was a tricycle type car with an imported engine, the Dion engine. And the first thing that happened was that John Dennis was booked for speeding going up Guildford High Street at 16 miles an hour. And he knew that the capacity of the vehicle wasn't great enough to get him to 16 miles an hour. But as he was booked as that, he used it as an advertising ploy.
Good for him.
And then the company moved rapidly on to making cars, and the first factory that was built as a purpose-built car factory is still in existence in the middle of Guildford.
And I understand it was the very first purpose-built car factory in the country.
Indeed,
didn't they make the cars on the top, on the first floor, and lower them by lift to take them out on the street?
Yes, they did. Yes. And then the showroom was at the bottom, and that building is still there.
Of course, I've had a lot of experience as an old lorry driver years ago, and in and around Dennis's, and I've known them to be one of the old reliables the great British makes.
Oh, right. Well, thank you for that.
It's good to think they're still making it now. After
all, very much so.
And
yes.
keeping very busy with it.
We are.
They've always concentrated on, say, local authorities, fire service, and ambulance, or buses, chassis. They never seem to be the ones to sow the all and sundry, did they?
Well, what happened was, obviously during the First World War, when the company made lots and lots of trucks for the services during the war, First World War, at the end of that, there were many, many surplus trucks as a result of the ending of the war, and so the company truck sales plummeted for everybody. And what they did was they moved on to more specialist vehicles in order to keep the company going. So they invented the gully emptier, for instance. The cesspool emptiers and gully emptiers were Dennis' invention.
We should see one of those.
There's one on the stand of the old vehicles.
Good.
Yeah. and then buses, of course, kept on going. So the company really concentrated on that aspect. And that's really one of the reasons why we're still here today and market leaders in those fields. A lot of our competitors have vanished because of the peaks and troughs of the truck business, whereas we've kept going through the specialist vehicle.
Well, that's very interesting, John, and we hope to get a lot of history today. I've got a few stories to tell about them, and what we want to find, of course, is a few old employees that can think back to the between war years, and if we can find any of those today, we should look on that as a bonus. Thank you, John.
Okay, well,
nice
thank you.
Met you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks a lot.
We're standing now in front of the Dennis Pathfinder 320, which shows you the facilities available on these modern buses. This has been in current production for about 18 months. It just about sits down and puts its ramps out, ready for the passenger to load with great ease. Right, up we go, up the ramp, and have a look on this modern bus, and boy, how buses have changed. Driver sitting there on a nice cozy seat, fully automatic gearbox, driving in comfort, and all the mod cons here for paying as you get on, of course. What a difference this is, and going to be when we look at the old Dennis Lance later on. Travelling in this in comfort and silence, driver there, obviously power steering. Times have changed, and Dennis has seen it all. Well, we're having a look now at the Dennis Dominator chassis. Several of these are now in service in Hong Kong. They have a 3,000 strong bus service in Hong Kong. This particular double-decker is a 169 passenger chassis. And looking along at the sophistication there, it really does give me a thrill today, having been brought up in lorries with a much more simple layout than this. But I'm going to find a lot of interest, and I hope you do, in looking at the technology behind these great Dennis vehicles. Well, every little boy wants to drive a fire engine, but even I would like to enjoy driving this. What a different fire engine to the old sort of early part of the century Dennis we saw just now, when they used to get out and wind the engine up and stand along the side with their brass helmets. And now we've got this luxury cab here with the fully automatic gearbox. And in the back there, as I can see in the crew cab area, they've got electric windows. And the crew, I understand, sit in those seats and actually plug into their breathing apparatus before they get to the fire. This really is modern living. Good old Dennis. Well, it's time now to have a look at and enthuse over some of these old Dennises. And something that I always liked was the casting of the radiator with his name on there, so plain. He had the nerve to put his surname on as his name. A lot of vehicle manufacturers used other names, but Mr. Dennis was proud of his name and proud of his product. That's a 1931 Dennis coach. Now here, a fire engine, not as modern as the one I sat in earlier. This is 1953, the Dennis Wheeled Escape. But how common these were on our roads. And I said they must have produced many thousands. Fire engines, buses, and something different here is the Dennis Gully Emptier. 1950s type of vehicle. The very forward control, the long bonnet. They used to call this the Dennis Pig, but believe me, they were no pig. They were a very solid, reliably built vehicle, and I was very familiar with the tipper version of this at one time. And by the way, they're looking for some spare parts for this gully emptier, so if any of you out there carry spare gully emptying bits on you, you can help this owner here. Now here's another interesting one, the Dennis Pax, a popular vehicle too, because it's very forward control. It gives you a long body on the back, and they were noted for their innovations like this. Now, we saw that big modern bus earlier, but how familiar I am with the old Dennis Lancet. In a lot of the cities of this country, and in the country roads you saw this old bus, this type of bus travelling around, reliable, and you've got to have something reliable for, as clockwork for bus services, haven't you? And Dennis certainly earned their name at that, with the Dennis Lancet. But this one that's got Guildford Bus Station on it may well be a local bus, but a fine example of a fine vehicle. Well, just to show the versatility of the Dennis firm, here's something else produced by them that I didn't know they produced. That is a lawnmower. They even produced their engine as they did for their coaches and lorries back in those days. Now, what year is this? Well, I've got with me Roger now, the private owner of this.
This left the factory here in Guildford just over 60 years ago on the 19th of March 1935.
Where did it go from there?
We think it went to Luton. We know it was sold to a Miss Neve. We've been unable to trace her, but we think she was a benefactress of the bowling club or the cricket club in Luton. And it was used properly there, and then it finished up in the village where we live, probably in the early 60s.
What was it used for in Luton, Rod?
Either for the bowling club or the cricket pitch. We're not quite sure.
Yeah?
But then it got kind of junked into our village. And it's stayed there ever since. The last 12 years it just laid unloved underneath the branches of a fir tree in the vicarage garden. I
read on the write-up that it had something to do with the churchyard mowing at one time.
Yeah, there's a guy called Jack the Lad who reputedly bought it for 10 quid, worked it for 20 years in the churchyard, and then sold it to the incoming vicar for 20 quid.
He was Jack the Lad. No wonder he's called Jack the Lad. It's a 24-inch cut on it.
24 inch.
And you still run it occasionally for purposes?
Oh, it cuts beautifully. It cuts like a razor. I enjoy trundling up and down the back garden. I really do.
Well, thanks for your help, Roger. A very interesting exhibit. A change from the other one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, it's more fire engines again now. Same old mate, Dennis. And here we've got someone who's driven them and now owns one privately, I understand, Jim?
Yes.
Tell us all about it, Jim. You're our regular fireman too. How come you want to do this as a hobby as well? Must be keen.
Well, it all started as a fire service benevolent fund venture on the fire station where we wanted to raise some money for the fund, and we got fed up with the carnivals and the jumble sales that were being forced upon us, so we asked the chief officer if we could buy an old fire engine, and this old fire engine was offered to us, and we used to run it round to junior schools and let the kids loose on it.
But have you driven Dennis in your career?
Yes, I've driven various makes of Dennis's. These were the first ones that I
What year
drove.
is this one?
This is 1958.
Still going strong,
50 design, that's right.
Yeah.
And I went on to drive the later 108 and 109 models, which were then becoming automatic gearboxes and a little bit easier to drive.
Yeah.
Right the way through to the current.
Is this Dennis's own engine in this one?
It's a Rolls-Royce engine.
It's a Rolls-Royce. Was that the B series?
It's the B80.
B80, that's the 8-cylinder,
5.5 litre.
like the services use, isn't
4
it?
mile to the gallon.
Yes,
Yeah,
not very
that's
economic,
it.
but a good engine.
Very thirsty.
Yes. Well, anyway, it's nice chatting to you, and nice to know there's a bit of enthusiasm there. And what do you think of Dennis's then?
Oh, superb vehicles. Wouldn't drive anything else, really.
Well done, good for you. Well, thanks a lot then, Jim.
Right
Nice chatting to you. Right, here proudly standing behind me is one of the old workhorses of Dennis, the Dennis Max. This particular one here belongs to John and June Cokes of Corfmullum in Dorset, who I remember having bought it a few years ago, spent quite a bit of time and money in its restoration, and have brought it back up to look a real genuine original Dennis. It's a real, what one would call a gutsy old lorry to drive, a bit noisy, but always utterly reliable. That Dennis's own diesel engine in there. They did the London to Brighton with it this year, as did many other Dennises. This is one of the best examples of the Max that I've ever seen around today. Another interesting little lorry that Dennis has made was the Ace, built on the 40 to 45 hundredweight chassis. And this, as you see, used to belong to County Borough Council of Brighton, and it used to do the repairs to the overhead trolleybus lines, which is an interesting life. And then, of course, it went into disuse about 1962, and finally it's been restored, owned privately, but it's been put back in the colours of its own firm, which is something we all like to see. But a smashing little vehicle, these, smaller than the big Max we saw, but nevertheless built for reliability and long use, which it has proved over and over again. Right, we've got a couple of young Dennis lads here now, Bob Loveland and John Phipps. I understand you were apprentices back in 1946.
Yeah. There's 1946 to 51 in my case.
Did you work together?
Yes, at times, yeah.
What department were you on?
Well,
Went through the lot.
I think the apprenticeship took us through the lot, from all the manufacturing shops to building engines to being in the drawing office, everything, planning, the whole.
How much did you get a week then, Bob?
I think we finished up at
15 bob.
15, 16 shillings when we finished at 21. 16 shillings, what, 76, 80p? 80p when we...
Well, we were talking about the history of Dennis. I suppose people like you were part of the history of Dennis, and what sort of pranks did you get up to as apprentices then? Quite a few, no doubt.
Some of them are quite dangerous when you come to look at them now by today's standards.
Well, the safety standards have knocked out all that now
Yes.
then, John, haven't they?
But they used to, of course in those days, the canteen used to be open, and the bar was open around Christmas time, which is something that wouldn't, of course it was, and they, down the repair shop, they used to wear big leather belts, didn't they? I can remember hooking somebody up in a big leather belt and on the gantry, and him being violently sick.
The thing was, at Christmas there, we used to service the Friary Brewery lorries.
Yeah.
And Friary Breweries used to send up a lot of Christmas spirit actually in the works.
Yes.
And by going home time, most of us were pretty well stoned.
Well and truly, it's different now, I know, and a lot of things are different now, and we've been looking around some of the modern chassis here today, and how different they are to the old Dennis rugged chassis and simplicity.
Well, it's not just that. In those days, we literally made everything. We machined everything. We assembled it, engines, gearboxes, back axles, even made the body. Nowadays, you can't afford to do that.
No, it's farmed in.
So we buy engines, we buy gearboxes, but we still design the vehicles, test the vehicles, and we finish up with these superb products that we do nowadays.
Sounds as though you're very proud of having worked for Dennis.
Even the lawn mowers.
Yeah,
I can remember one of the worst jobs we ever had was grinding the cutters for the lawn mowers.
That's good to hear.
Incredibly noisy.
Anyway, it's lovely chatting to you both, and long may you last, and Dennis's too.
Thank you very much.
Cheers then. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Yep.
That's it.
Well, I remember my first day walking up the yard as a real green boy, seeing this lovely green fire engine, 1937. I think the registration number was FPC 250 or something like that. Marvellous car. I thought, oh, I'm going to be part of this firm. I was so thrilled about it.
That sounds good, that's right. You're proud enough to wear the jersey now, even. You were away a couple of years during the war?
During the war, yes.
What regiment were you in?
Well, I was in the RAF, actually.
Yeah?
On the Grand Star.
Didn't have many Dennises. They had some Dennis tankers in the RAF, of course they did.
Big high, yes, RAF, big high, Pax 5s, I think they were.
That's right, I remember the Pax 5s, that's it.
Yes. So
well, you sound as though you enjoyed your life with Dennis.
Yes, it was wonderful life there, really. We had our ups and downs, you know, but
well, that's life all
I wouldn't have been without the job. And the one thing about it, the job was secure, not like today. You could go and get a job, and I was there for life. And that was the wonderful thing. You didn't lose your job, providing you weren't misbehave yourself. You kept the job. And I always remember one thing about it. that in the old days, if you were 2 minutes late, the gates were shut, and you lost what we call a quarter of an hour.
Quarter top, yeah.
But I mean, fortunately, I was a very good timekeeper, so it didn't worry me. I was always there 10 minutes before.
And what about today, Peter? Have you met many of your old mates you haven't seen for a long time?
Some nice friends like Don Plumley and one or two of the other old stagers, you know, that were there in my day.
Yeah.
And of course, I met John Smith, who was in Iraq. He was captured and in Iraq for 8 years, 8.5 years.
Was he really?
Yes,
no, he didn't tell us that.
He told 8.5 years, and he was a great chap. One of the, we think the best managing director we ever had. Of course, then he went to Iraq, as you know, on this doing the promotion thing to get orders, and then he got into, well, he didn't get into trouble. It's just they made a big thing out of it, and he was really.
That's an interesting story you've given us there, Peter.
Into virtual prison.
Well, I never.
So, but no, I've had some wonderful times at Dennis's, really.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that a British firm have been going for 100 years.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
The way they're turning out stuff now, let's hope they go on to another 100.
This is what I was so thrilled about, because there was a time when we were very low, when we took a Hester, Dennis took over, and we thought, we didn't realise, I think some of us, how low we got and how near we got to being closed down. But then it all went up again, and that was a wonderful thing. And now, today, I mean, they're doing a wonderful job, and some of the biggest...
and I'll tell you what, Peter, I've enjoyed chatting to you, and when they have their next centenary, I'll come back and have a chat with you again. How about that? Nice meeting you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Cheers, then.
Yeah, okay.
Dennis Factory. Well, we're on board the Dennis Dart now, which is part of the free shuttle service provided by Dennis's today. And we're on our way down to Dennis Way to have a look around the factory, where we shall continue our interviews and photography to give you some more interest. Well, what a wonderful day and what a wonderful display it is. And just have a look at this. This is known here as the Dennis Flying Pig. And it's Dennis's own works fire engine. It was built in 1936. The Flying Pig, they always called this model the Pig, as you can see the little piggy nose on them. They were no pigs to drive. They were reliable, tough little vehicles. But look at the condition of it. I do believe this was mentioned a couple weeks ago on the London to Brighton when we were talking to someone down there. But over the back, that looks a little bit different. Something we haven't seen is Dennis's war effort. They built lots of vehicles for use during the war, and that particular one, I think that was one of the Max models with a slightly more utility front, as they built more wartime vehicles as cheaply as possible. But that one was used in the RAF for conveying goods and personnel around the air stations. Be interested to know its history. It's an old war veteran without any doubt, but once again another branch of Dennis's work. Right, we're going to have a chat now to Jeff Thorpe, who's got this very attractive Dennis Lancet. What year is it, Jeff?
1950 originally.
Originally? Why do you say originally?
Because it was rebodied in 1960.
Yeah, lots of buses get rebodied during the service. Are you a bus man yourself?
I was, yes. I've retired now.
You're just retired now, and how long have you owned this one?
Just on 3 years.
3 years. What engine's this?
Dennis.
It's a Dennis's own engine. Of course, it will be
Yep.
back in 50.
Yeah.
And the gearbox?
That's also Dennis.
Dennis gearbox.
Yeah.
4-speed, 5-speed?
It's 4 normal speeds, and then it has that's crash box,
Yeah.
long way round,
Yeah.
and then an automatic overdrive.
Oh, that sounds complicated.
So
but
it is.
but in that overdrive, they're quite quick, weren't
Oh
they?
yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what service? So what's the history of it?
It started off in Wales, and then it was bought by Horseshoe originally,
Yeah?
and they had it rebodied and put it into one of their subsidiary fleets. So, and then eventually they had said all the subsidiary fleets coaches would all have the parent company's livery, which I've done again here.
Yeah. Now you said
So
it's
that's-
rebody. What body is this?
Thurgood of Ware.
Thurgood body.
Yeah.
What was the original body on it?
Yates half-cab Sun Saloon.
Oh, was it just been all half cab?
Yeah.
Oh, you never. So they do change their phases.
Oh, yeah.
In the services.
The reason is, I think, that at the time, coaches were fairly difficult to get hold of, so they upgraded them rather than buy new
Yeah.
by putting a full front on.
Of course, they were always well maintained, reliable
Oh, yeah.
vehicles, and they just kept going. It was a
Sure.
shame to buy a new one in a way.
That's
and
right.
what do you think of the Dennis motor in there?
What do I think of it? Very reliable.
That's
Very good.
That's
Yeah,
good.
excellent.
Well, thanks a lot, Jeff.
Pleasure.
Now you have many more happy miles with it. But I see you've got her for sale, but I'm not putting in a bid today.
No,
but,
okay.
anyway, happy motoring.
Thank you very
Cheers
much
then,
indeed.
Jeff. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Well, we've already seen a World War II, Dennis. What about a World War I? Built in 1914, the engine's got the stamp on there. Although it wasn't registered for civilian use till 1924, they did a lot with wartime vehicles after the First World War, where they brought them out and reconditioned them, put them in civilian use. We don't know anything about the history of her, who she worked for, but what an old character that is. That's the oldest Dennis lorry here today, running on solid tyres, very primitive, simple engine, but a little bit more restoration, and that'll be running again, keeping the good name on the road after all that time. What a find. Right then, let's have a word with you, Tim.
Hello, Jerry.
It's the first time I've seen one of these today, the
Is it?
Lance.
Yes.
Quite a rare bus now.
Fairly rare now. Believed to be the only Aldershot one of this sort.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
in my part of the country over the side, we didn't get so many Dennis buses over there as you do over here.
Right.
And the Lance is a rare sight. When did these come out?
Well, this particular one came out in 1950, but of course the Lance was made before the war as well.
Yes.
And then the K3 came out, and Aldershot bought some of these in 1950. They had 40 of them altogether.
So she's original Aldershot.
Aldershot and District when new, yeah. And
Yeah.
this particular one worked at Hindhead Depot, as
Yeah.
far as we know, for a whole working
Now
life.
she's privately owned by you,
Privately owned now since 1964.
and you're doing the free shuttle run today.
We're on the
backward.
shuttle, that's right.
That's
yeah.
great,
Yeah,
that's
we're doing
great.
an occasional trip on there.
Tell us a bit about the engine.
Okay, a Dennis engine, the 06 type, and I think again it was a pre-war design, but still being made right into the early 50s. Fitted to a large number of Dennis coaches, but not so many double-deckers. I think double-deckers with the Lance, with the K306 engine, were a much more rare breed. And I know Aldershot had 40 of them, and there may have been one or two more.
And who did the body
The
work?
body's East Lancs of Blackburn.
Yes.
And it's a
Oh, you
51-seater.
found
Yes,
yeah.
yes, it's a 51-seater, and it's a low height, you know, because Aldershot had a lot of low bridges in the area,
They did.
and all their double-deckers were low-height double-deckers.
What height would that be?
That's 13'4".
How long have you owned it?
I've owned it 31 years now.
30. You've owned it privately.
Yeah,
31
in
years.
private ownership, 31
You do.
years.
You rally it occasionally. no doubt?
Occasionally, yeah. It's been sort of restored 3 times, you see, since I've had it, because we keep
Glutton for punishment.
keep having to do things. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway.
The most recent job is an engine change. The old engine, you'll be pleased to hear, reached 400,000 miles, and we decided to retire it. So we bought a second-hand engine, which is a relative youngster. That's only done 160,000, and she's in there now and running beautifully.
Not a bad advert for Dennis. You're doing a grand job, Tim.
Righto.
Thanks a
Nice
lot.
to see you.
Cheers.
Righto.
And so we come to the end of a very interesting day, courtesy of Dennis. We've been to the show, we've spent a bit of time here in the factory, we've had a look around at these old timers that I found most interesting, and I hope you have too. And what a better way to end the day than to travel back to the showground on the shuttle service on a Dennis low line. This is Barry Island, the Vale of Glamorgan's premier seaside resort and home to the Bus and Coach Wales event, now in its second year and organised by the Cardiff Transport Preservation Group. Today's event commemorates 75 years of municipal motor bus operation in the city of Cardiff, so let's focus on a selection of the bus and coach entries. Entries of all ages and classes are welcome to attend this event. Indeed, many operators regard Bus and Coach Wales as the industry's showcase in the Principality. Many vehicles seen arriving originate with operators who were frequent visitors to the resort in days gone by. The distinctive lilac and red coaches from Hereford-based Y Valley Motors were regular visitors to Barry Island. Two rare beasts here. Brewer's unique to Britain Van Hool A600 tells a rare 1956 Burling-embodied AEC Reliance, recently brought out of hibernation to attend Bus and Coach Wales. With its blind correctly set, this Leyland Tiger Cub Wayman combination was one of a trio originally destined for Trinidad. Jones omnibus services were dominant in the Monmouthshire valleys, and this example has subsequently passed through the hands of several preservationists. There's no mistaking the sight and sound of the Bedford O-type. This magnificent example is followed by Willowbrook Viscount-bodied AEC Reliance, specially built for the Devon Country Lanes. Isloyne Borough Transport, one of the remaining municipal sector operators, surprisingly chose truck-derived Dodge Commandos with East Lancs bodies for their initial foray into minibus operation. The familiar roar of the Gardner 6LW, back on home ground in this wartime Mark I Guy Arup, carrying Brislington Lowbridge body. It completed more than 20 years service in the red and white fleet prior to disposal. Entries travel from far and wide, one of over 700 London RFs. This one now resides in Wiltshire. Another long-distance visitor is this splendid 36-foot Leyland Leopard with Alexander Y-type semi-coach body. This was the last new vehicle delivered to the Stratford Blue concern prior to absorption into the parent Midland Red Company. The superb livery of the old A&F Brewer Company adorns this extensively rallied AEC Reliance. Its entire working life was spent in and around the Somerset village of South Petherton. Upon retirement, it was subsequently restored over a 6-year period in a farmyard and looks every inch a typical brewer's bus. No seaside resort would be complete without an open-top double-decker. St David, the patron saint of Wales, arrives in the form of this 1961 Bristol low-decker, originally with the Bristol Omnibus Company and still in everyday use in Newport. Coity Motors were based on the northern outskirts of Bridgend and purchased this rare Birmingham-bodied Leyland Tiger Cub brand new, running it for almost 30 years. It now wears its original 1960 style livery. The town of Barry was Western Welsh territory, so today's rally debut of this former Western Welsh Reliance is most fitting. The music of the 470 engine and the beautiful wine red and royal ivory livery complete a superb vehicle. With Woodham's famous steam railway local graveyard in the greenery behind, the entire coach park is given over to Bus and Coach Wales. Vehicles are nicely spaced out for all to enjoy, Cardiff Bus having a strong presence in the foreground. As Barry's near neighbour, public transport in Cardiff was once provided by buses like this. This fine Crossley with Scottish commercial low-bridge body entered service in 1949 and is now in the care of the Welsh Industrial and Maritime Museum. The 32 route to St Bacon's and beyond was a regular haunt of these machines out into the rural environs of the capital. The traditional Cardiff Corporation livery of crimson lake and cream positively glistens in the wonderful May sunshine. On the left is a fine example of Ronda Transport standard half-cab double-decker, the Mark V AC Regent in 27-foot form with Northern Counties body. By comparison, fellow BET operator South Wales Transport favoured the longer 30-foot version of the Regent. This Willowbrook-bodied specimen was part of a large fleet placed in service as replacements for the much-lamented Mumbles tram. Hordes of these buses were the mainstays of the Swansea City services. Originally numbered 1284 in the Western Welsh fleet, this Reliance was restored over several years on a poultry farm by the Heads of the Valleys trio. Feathering its cap, so to speak, is this splendid Guy Vixen Special, nowadays resident in the mid-Wales town of Knighton, a long way from its native London. A nice restoration of a once typical London Transport country area single-decker. Note the fine attention to detail, a trait of true enthusiasm. Yet another long-distance visitor is this beautiful Bristol MW6G with characteristically robust Eastern Coachworks bodywork, finished to touring coach standard. The Bristol Scroll once graced virtually all buses in the old Tilling Group fleets, and Eastern National's Tilling green and cream livery has withstood the test of time. Southall produced chassis were aplenty in the difficult terrain of the South Wales valleys, And brewers were keen operators of this mark, right up to the cessation of production in the late 1970s. This wonderful restoration typifies the company's vehicle policy in the 1960s and the 70s. Steeped in legend, this enchanting hilltop terminus is still served by brewers' buses on a daily basis. Today, Brewers is a First Bus subsidiary and much developed from its original heartland. The senior management are keen to promote our transport heritage and have provided assistance and encouragement in the completion and continued operation of this privately owned reliance. Well done, Brewers. The traditional single-deck back end of a bus, the former BET fleets in the Principality were regular customers for Wayman's Herms bodies. 2 decades ago, the South Wales area was awash with tiger cubs. Most of the BET operators placed many repeat orders for this lightweight from the Leyland stable. As with most rallies, memorabilia is widely on sale. Here, Alan Roberts goes just a bit further with these magnificent watercolours. .200 APB, a 1956 Birmingham-bodied Reliance, was retired over a decade ago by Somerset operator Safeways of South Petherton. Yeovil via Crewkerne was the regular stamping ground of this 44-seater. However, Safeguard of Guildford were its original owners. Last year's Bus and Coach Wales Rally was not so fortunate weather-wise. Today's event was soaked in beautiful sunshine all day long. The crowds came in their thousands, and with a location as superb as Barry Island, with all its attractions, Bus and Coach Wales was an excellent day out for all the family. The late William Hopkin John purchased this distinctive Tiger Cub chiefly for coaching duties way back in 1960. Polished aluminium lettering was often reminiscent of the larger operators, but the tiny Coity Motors concern always had the big operator image. This is another operator, sadly no longer with us. Plying their routes out of the county town of Bridgend in harmony with the old Western Welsh Company, Coity Motors like Tiger Cubs too. Bringing our visit to an end, the Bristol Vintage Bus Group seem to be doing brisk business in the sales department. The Cardiff Transport Preservation Group are to be congratulated on staging such a wonderful rally. So it's goodbye to Barry Island.